than other parts of the province. This organization, No Farms, No Food, has been in existence now for a number of years. As they saw some erosion of the farmland in the Annapolis Valley. And for that reason, they became concerned. They took on first, of course, Kings County Council to push back against the sell-off of fairly significant areas of farmland. And it happens now that we have done, I think, what is a wonderful study commissioned by the Minister of Agriculture to take a look at the future of preserving agricultural land in Nova Scotia. And to that effect, he set in motion a committee made up of people who, in their own right, had a great understanding of the land base and the agricultural land base of Nova Scotia, and have brought forth a very, very detailed, a very comprehensive report. It's my only copy. I'm not going to submit it, but I do want to reference it during my time. And it so happens that the main and central concept that comes out of this document with recommendations to the minister is that Class 2 and Class 3 soils and Class 4, that is cleared land, remain to be preserved for agriculture in Nova Scotia. You know, each of us, as we come along as members of this House, as members of society, we can so often be very short-sighted in the way that we look at good public policy. And I think this is an area where we need to be bold. We need to be very, very much, you know, far-sighted in our thinking around preserving agricultural land. Lots of times now we look at a lot of agricultural land in Nova Scotia that is not in use. And I think it's because land not in use, therefore, putting it over to development seems to be, you know, the steps that will be taken for this land. But you know, the Class 2 to Class 3 and Class 4 soils, you know, it's eons of time to create them, and once they're taken out of farmland, we're not likely to get them back. We're not going to get them back for sure when development takes place. Often, however, it's really the pressure on good farmland close to communities that comes under the greatest pressure to go towards development. Now, Kings County has been not just a leader in Nova Scotia, they've been leader in the country since they put in place a land use policy back in the 70s. And the goal and the mandate of that plan was to preserve the best agricultural land in Nova Scotia, but also in the top 3 agricultural land bases that we have in the country. So, for the most part, the plan has accomplished its goal to a good extent. Not completely, because we know that you know, some flexibility is required, and in fact the plan itself allows for you know, small parcels of land in an orderly manner that could be added to the growth centers, because the concept was to direct population growth into those centers and therefore not chop up the land into building lots for residential use. And so this has, in effect, worked very, very well. At the present time, we have tremendous amounts of land in the Annapolis Valley that can go into housing. There's currently about 15,000 building lots that are available. Even in the town of Wolfville. You know, has had a lot of pressure on it. It's a university town. It's a town with quite a large number of amenities, and so there's been a lot of building going on. But if we take a look at you know, the maps of Wolfville and talk to the mayor and councillors there, they have sufficient building lots for the next 25 to 40 years. So while adding some of our farmland to growth centers is possible, there really isn't a great need to do it at this time. So it is this farmland and generally large tracts which are close to communities and under great pressure. But in many ways, they're becoming areas that are very vibrant agriculturally, because growing you know, market crops for the farm market, which has really boomed in recent years, and being close to communities, this can be a great you know, agribusiness for those farmers. So they can definitely sell their land to other farmers. There isn't a question around that. But of course, their futures in many cases without a pension plan, and if there isn't succession in the family to pass on the farmland, and selling the land definitely is one of the ways in which they look at their own property, their farmland. And this is why in this report as well, the preservation of agricultural land in Nova Scotia, the concept of developing an agricultural land trust, it does put some onus on all Nova Scotians to be partners in preserving the land. And I now know people in the Annapolis Valley that are prepared to make again, endowments and donations, the same as people do to Nature Trust, so that this very valuable Class 2 and 3 soils will be maintained for future generations. And I think we, as Nova Scotians, do have an obligation to do that. One of the things which I don't have a lot of time to go into today, which we all know, and that is if you have a healthy agricultural sector, when we had hundreds of thousands of acres under production, as we did, let's say, at the turn of the century, when the 1901 farm census was taken, we had hundreds of thousands of acres that were under cultivation. So part of our problem is getting back to a stronger agricultural sector in this province. I think the local food concept is catching on. There is more desire to grow our own food, and as time passes, that need, in fact, is going to be accelerated. We know there are a lot of forces and factors that are lining up to make us once again become producers of safe, fresh, and grown in our local area. So it is my hope that we will move this preservation of agricultural land in Nova Scotia along quickly, so that counties like Kings County don't have to go through constant demand to place agricultural land into development. Just a few moments ago in this House, you know, we debated the Treasure Trove Act, and you know, it makes me think of what greater treasure than the soil on which we grow our food. And I think all of us in Nova Scotia need to take a strong forward way to make sure that the next generation does have that land available to them, and that we don't become like one of the great food-producing areas of Canada, the Niagara Peninsula, which has literally lost its agricultural land base to urban sprawl. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I take my place.
Thank you. I will now recognize the Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the Liberal caucus for the topic for today's debate. Not really a difficult one, I think, to support. Therefore, be it resolved that the No Farms, No Food organization be supported in a timely manner by implementing recommendations from the Agricultural Land Review Committee's recent report. I have to say that this report was a joint project on behalf of my department and the Department of I want to say municipal relations, but Service Nova Scotia and municipal relations. The Honourable Ramona Jennings was my partner in this. The committee members,
Order, please. You must not mention the member's name in the House of Assembly. I would ask that you mention the minister's title or the member's seat. Thank you.
Sorry about that, Mr. Speaker. Well, I guess maybe I won't go to the names of the members on the committee. But anyway, I want to say how much we appreciate the efforts of the members on the committee. The member for Kings West stated that what qualified individuals they were, and they were. I'm going to set the I guess the context for my comments, and I can try. I don't know if I'll get this done before we leave, but well, yeah, I guess I probably can. There'll be another member speak. But anyway, I'll read a little bit from this report, and I'll try to get a photocopy so I can table it. But approximately 13% of land most suitable for agricultural production, classes 2, 3, and 4 soil, are used for agriculture in Nova Scotia. Slightly less than 1% of this land is also used for wild blueberry production. Urban development takes up 5.4% of the 2, 3, and 4, and the remaining 81% is in other uses, natural forests or other natural state cultivated forests, etc. So I really inform the House of that only to give some notion of exactly what the pressure presently is on what we would deem to be the best soils in the province. Number two being the best soil, but and probably in the lowest amount. But anyway, to let people know that urban development really across the province has only taken about 5.5% of that soil, and there's a significant amount of number 2 and 3 soils, Mr. Speaker, that the Nova Scotians own in our crown lands, but the and some of the, in terms of the resolution, by timely manner by implementing recommendations, we've been working at a couple of things for sure that are recommended in the report, Mr. Speaker, and one of those is around the quality of soils in the province, trying to improve the quality of soils, and we made a commitment in the 2009 election around a soil amendment program. So I hope to be able to say something about that really soon. The other one was around dikes, and we every year try to enhance our system of dikes. I got to say it's a challenge, and with all the issues around global warming, possible rising sea levels, and so on. This is one that the province is definitely aware of. And I want to say that for members, and I think probably the member for Hants West and the member for Kings West would be aware, I think because of their constituencies, but of the value of the soils on the dike land. That They're some of the best soils in the province, Mr. Speaker, and so we really do want to try. Although the dikes actually are protecting a lot of urban or commercial development in some areas, but still we have large areas that we protect. We protect farmland, and some of that, I think, probably a fair bit of it growing forages or grains, and I'm not sure about the amount that would be into horticultural crops. The issue, I think, that tends to get people emotionally wound up on protection for farmland, I think, is probably the idea that maybe we're losing it at an extreme rate. We're not, but that's no reason to be that we shouldn't be concerned. We should be putting some planning. It's even though we have the review committee report, we've turned this over to an interdepartmental committee, and we're really hoping that some things will come out that we can kind of act on fairly soon after they make some recommendations. Because I'm the Minister of Natural Resources, I'm glad that I have people from that department working on this as well, because they are the people who bought land for the Crown last year, and we're working on the Community Lands Trust initiative to try to determine what that legislation might look like. We've done the community consultation, and hope that there may be some avenues where the public could become strongly involved in the preservation of farmland in their communities. I want to, I guess I'll restate something that the member for Kings West had said. I may say it differently, but I think my meaning is the same. The easiest way to preserve farmland is to make agriculture profitable, and this is a real issue for the industry. I'm well aware of it as minister, and actually was the reason that when I spoke to the Premier after we formed government, letting him know that if he wanted me in cabinet, I wanted to be the Minister of Agriculture. I asked for the job in the hopes that I could be influential in changing policy that might help the industry along. And there are sectors of the industry that are fine. This doesn't have to be all doom and gloom, but there are those that certainly require some support, some help, some other policy direction, and I'm really glad for an opportunity to be there. I don't think Nova Scotians recognize that in terms of milk, chicken, and eggs, we're self-sufficient, Mr. Speaker. We produce all that we consume. And of course, I guess people would know, we produce all of the apples that we would consume. We're exporters. Anything that we're exporters in, we're not consuming at all. Blueberries would be another example. And I've asked my department, if they could, to take a look at, if it's possible to find out exactly what the levels of production are for things that Nova Scotians consume. I mean, we don't want to be looking at pineapples, but certainly for the things that we have been able to grow traditionally in Nova Scotia, I'd like to get a much clearer picture of that. And then we could kind of address some of the issues around the security side that might take some of the sting out of this concern. We're not. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the issue of food security is one that really should be a national issue, not a provincial issue. We don't. I'm thinking we probably grow wheat, but not in any significant amount. And I'm thinking probably more for livestock than for people, but I could be wrong on that. But certainly in this country we can grow wheat. We grow more than Canadians consume. And so, we should be thinking on a national level, what is it that we produce in the country to feed the people in the country, and how Nova Scotia could be a part of that. But certainly when you think that Prince Edward Island, and if you think about the agriculture, the farm gate receipts there are pretty close to the farm gate receipts in Nova Scotia, and PEI will fit into my school board district twice. So there's a lot that we can do to try to advance agriculture and to take care of the concerns of Nova Scotians as far as good jobs, healthy economy, healthy people, and food security. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The honourable member for Hants West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening to take a few minutes to speak to what is quite a significant issue and has been for some time in this province. And, you know, we see the title here, and we sort of missed it a bit, I think, tonight. No farms, no food. Well, let's get right down to the meat and potatoes of it. Pardon the pun, I guess, sort of. But, you know, there's a lot we seem to be missing here for some reason. And the minister's right. He talked about the industry, and he touched very quickly because of the time, I realize, on a number of areas. We do have successful agriculture in the province of Nova Scotia. You know, the apple growers do very well. I have masons in my own backyard, and I know throughout the valley we have a wonderful apple industry. Talked about the chickens and the eggs. We do very, very well, no question. But we have missed on a few areas of great importance, and we've seen the hog industry fade away, which was a thriving industry in this province not so long ago. You know, hundreds of years ago, Mr. Speaker, hundreds of years ago, people came here. And they farmed this land, and we talked a little bit about the dike land a few minutes ago, and where did they start? If you think back to where the farming, when people came here in the late 1700s, there's records, I think, that go back around the late 1780s or so that would show that agriculture was, there was recordings of it in this province where they tried to attempt, and I think to some degree success that they gained over the years for a variety of reasons, but it would show that I think a lot of farming was done along those dike lands, of which don't, you know, are gone today for the most part. They've been plowed over, and I know in my own area, there's a lot of area that would have been diked one time along the Avon River. It would all have to be rediked if you wanted to get that land mass back. But the report does detail, you know, that farmland's not going away in great numbers. The percentages are low, and the percentages are quite low, actually, to what I think people maybe realized in the beginning. I think there was this worry that the percentage of numbers was quite high. But the problem is this, is that we have farmland that has not been farmed for a very long time, and the science and the soils, and I'm no scientist, but I know the minister went to school and studied this stuff, and he would probably be a lot more up to speed on the scientific details of farming the land, but what that does to the soil when it's not farmed, and all of the treatments and the manures, I suppose, and all of these things that go into it, and the replowings over the years and growing. But, pardon me, we've got the land. There's no question about that. We need the people, but more importantly, we need the incentives. People do want to farm. I talk to the people in the agriculture community. I attend meetings and I meet with folks individually on a variety, not just chicken farmers and not just apple growers, but beef farmers who are concerned about their industry, dairy farmers who are concerned about their industry with all that's going on and where things are, and while they wait for rulings, and I know the minister's very familiar with that. But we've got the farmland in this province. We've got some wonderful farmland throughout the valley and other areas of Nova Scotia. And I know that myself and the member for Kings West are obviously have a partisan toward the valley, but we know how rich that valley land once was and still is. There's a lot of it there. And I talked to a fellow who's gone now, and Mr. Smith, that's from down Mount Denson Way, who owned great acres of property there, but he just watched it go away and not farmed it. He was an older man and he had no one to take it. And why wouldn't they take it? Because there was no profit in it. And you spoke, Minister, a few minutes ago about why isn't the land being farmed. You have to have a profit. You got to make a dollar at it. You got to be successful. Otherwise, you starve yourself. And we all know that. But no farms, no food is real. And it's very real in this province right now. And we soon have to find a way to bring people here. Now, I'm hearing, and I hear on CBC this morning, I guess it was a little bit in the paper about it, about the immigration. Now, we saw immigrants come to this province way back when, in the earlier 1900s, I think around 1925, maybe, and forward through Pier 21. If you're into history at all, you would have read and studied, and you guys as school teachers are probably well aware of this, both of you, and others, that a number of immigrants came to this country through Pier 21 and were dispersed throughout Nova Scotia, throughout Prince Edward Island, throughout New Brunswick. And where did they go? Farming, a lot of them, on farms or began farms and given land, and were quite successful. And that went on for generations. A lot of generations. But something happened, and I've said this before in many meetings I've attended. Where did the agricultural industry took a turn somewhere? It was profitable, but at some point, the success started to wane away. Was it because of government interference? Was it because of commodities in some way? As we see the hog industry, some things you can't control. You try to have a farm at a certain size that makes sense, that's profitable. But you're either big or you have nothing today, it seems. If you look at the dairy industry, you'll see where if you're not big and you don't have a lot of herd, you're probably losing out. You can't afford to stay afloat. Who wants to take that over? Certainly the sons and grandsons and granddaughters are not interested. Why would they be? Again, perhaps it's just the way things are turning in this century. You know, in these times, we see our children who are interested in being lawyers and they want to come work in a place like this, and doctors that we need desperately, and nurses. That's all good. But if you look back even over the last few years, and I know from family who've been in the farming industry, on my wife's side, her grandfather was a farmer. But he also worked a full-time job at Fundy Gypsum. Why? Even in his time, why did he have to have another full-time job? Because he couldn't succeed at farming. So this is not something that's just happened overnight. We've watched it happen. Some would say we've done very little. You talk to the farm community, we've done very little to support them. And promises are made, and it's too bad that politics are involved, is sort of my opinion when it comes to some industries in this province, and farming being one of them. It's too bad that politics are involved, because politics seem to make it worse at times. And we have an expectation, and I've brought this up to the minister in this House, and I think in his time in opposition, I know that he's brought it to the floor of this House, how promises are made, and promises are made about we're going to do wonderful things for the agricultural industry. What have we really done for the agricultural industry? Well, yeah, we've thrown some money at this, and we've watched it go away with no success. And we've thrown money at that, and for what? In the short term, and I know you've said this, but the short term is no good. A long-term plan is what is required if we are going to be involved. We see Quebec. Quebec made a huge investment in their agricultural industry. And I forget what the figure was, but it did seem to be beneficial in the majority of areas, I believe. I'm not sure what all the details of that are, but I know that they had a big investment because it meant something. The government said, we're serious about farming in the province of Quebec. So they put an investment into that because it meant something to them. Does it mean something to the government in Nova Scotia? I think that it does. It's always the same old question, though. It's always about the dollars and cents. Isn't that the unfortunate thing? Well, that's too bad, in my opinion. We're saying we're going to do this or we're going to do that. We're either going to make the investment or we're not going to make the investment. That's what it really comes down to. If you talk to the farmers that are out there, and I know, Minister, you've talked to them for 11, 12 years now or more. You've been talking to the farmers. You know what it's like out there. You were a hobby farmer, I guess I'll call it, as well as a school teacher. Perhaps you would have been a full-time farmer had you been able to make it go with that. Your industry, the sheep you were in, they're even struggling today, as we hear in the agricultural news. But what has to happen is, it's great to do all these studies. It's wonderful that we now know, after great debate and great heartache for people like the town of Wolfville and families in the valley and farm families in the valley and just general population in the valley, that this report is out, that the study's been done. And it says, it points out some good facts that, in fact, our land is not going away. So with our land not going away, I think I'll stick to this point. With the land not going away, we need to create an incentive to bring people here. If we do not have our own people, our own sons, daughters, grandsons, thank you, Mr. Reid, that want to invest and carry on with the family farm, we know that the land exists. Yes, it's going to take some work. We know that too. You spoke about it, and I think the member for Kings West spoke about it as well here a few minutes ago, how that soil now has to be revitalized. That probably means money. In all honesty, it means work and it means money. Is the government of Nova Scotia today interested in investing in the farming industry, regardless of what it is? We have success. We know how to be successful in this province. We have the people with the knowledge and the ability to be successful in this province in certain areas of farming. But that knowledge can be transferred over, I believe, in a variety of areas of farming. Whether we've got people here that know how to farm beef. They know how to grow this and they know how to grow that. They know how to make a dollar at it, but they need some help to get there. We talk about bringing the immigrants in, and as I started down this road and this morning on CBC, a great piece on there about that, and I'm, you know, I'm for that. In all honesty, I think that that's great. If that's what it takes to get farms alive and well in Nova Scotia, I think that's great, and we've seen that through, you know, immigrants before, as I've said. But what are those incentives? A small amount of money I know was tossed around with that, and I say small. It's not really small. It's a couple $100,000 or so, whatever, $250 maybe. I don't know how far that goes. Is that a farm? Is that 2 farms? Is that 20 people? It will be interesting to see if there's any uptake on that. I know that I'll be watching it closely because it worked in the past quite successfully. And the incentives were there years ago. So if the government is serious about what we're going to do in this province with the agriculture sector, we have to soon see that. And I know that the Speaker, we're going to wrap up here in just 1 second. I want to point out that we keep hearing about the strategy.
20 seconds.
The 10-year strategy. We're almost 2 years into the 10-year strategy promise now. So is it going to be an 8-year strategy or is it still going to be a 10-year strategy? You know, and I'll say this, and the Premier of the day now made this statement just before I close. A year and a half or so ago, when the Honourable Rodney MacDonald made a statement about looking forward in the future, the statement was made by the Premier Dexter. He said, you won't even be around when that comes too. I'm worried now. I'm not really worried, I guess, when it comes right down to it. Is this government going to be around? Are you going to be around, Minister, to see this through? If we keep going, none of us will probably be around, and this will all be for naught. So I encourage you, I implore you to get the strategy of the agricultural around in this House is what I'm referring to. Nothing worse, sir. But around in this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I realize you want me to wrap up, but I would just say, keep the people, the Agricultural Society, at most important in your mind. I know you are. Make the investment that counts. We've got the land. The study says we've got the land to do it. Let's get on with it. Let's support the people of Nova Scotia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I would like to thank all the honourable members for an excellent debate this evening. We will now rise, as determined earlier, to sit tomorrow morning between the hours of 9 a.m. and 12 noon. Thank you.